How's it going? Good afternoon, Jen and Steve.
Hey, Marcello.
Hello, hello.
How are you guys today?
Good, thanks. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Thanks so much for putting some time aside to chat. I'm really looking forward to catching up and hearing about some of the challenges and opportunities that you guys are seeing out there. Before we start, maybe you can each do just a quick intro, who you are, background, company, stuff like that, and then we'll kind of get into it together.
Sure. Steve, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Steve Pons. I'm the managing director of Staples Promotional Products in Canada. And so I oversee the team here that handles promotional products and branded merchandise for a variety of customers coast to coast. We're about 220 people in offices from Montreal through to Vancouver. That's me.
Awesome. I'm Jen Roney. So I work on Steve's team and I manage our marketing and our account services team. So we run a lot of e-commerce stores for customers filled with their branded merchandise. So my team takes care of designing the merchandise, designing the e-store, running kind of those programs, and then obviously our brand and our customer marketing and our design teams as well.
Super interesting. Yeah, so you must both have an interesting perspective because you are involved in running a large organization. You also work with a lot of large organizations. So what's kind of happening in your world right now? What are you seeing out there with customers as well? What kind of challenges are you facing?
I think for everyone, the world's turned a little bit upside down from what would consider to be normal. And I think customers and our own people are also just looking at, what will the new normal look like? This has now been about 4 to 6 weeks that people have been operating, working from home, and, markets have been obviously upended. And so, where typical supply and demand rules work from a business point of view, it's turned that on its head to a certain extent. And, people are much more concerned about the essentials. And so, for us, it's been very much, how can we help people, help our customers, help our people not only get through this, but also, operate their business and continue to operate their business and figure out what will this new normal look like for the next several months that we'll be working through this together. What's been interesting is the speed with which that dynamic change has really taken shape over the last several weeks, and it's been pretty heartening to see a lot of the response from customers, from industry, and some of the malleability of the business that we're in responding to what the demands are for what people need. It's been fascinating and heartening to really see that. So I know it's a pretty grand question there, or answer your question, but I'd say that's the overarching thing at this point in time.
Yeah. And then
I would just echo what Steve said there around, I think kind of the past month has very much been a lot of people just adjusting within their own organizations to immediate changes, both from the demand and the supply side. But now I think you're starting to see some conversations around, all right, that new world component and what things look like from here in all facets of different industries and revenue streams. And I think the big unknown a little bit still is, and you guys tell me if you agree or disagree, is how I think the degree to which consumer behavior will shape our new normal is significant. And I think we're still feeling what that consumer behavior and customer behavior might look like against a backdrop of not being entirely sure when and how different restrictions, businesses, et cetera, will begin to open and how long we're maybe in this for.
Yeah. So when you say consumer behavior and how that might change, what do you think the new normal will look like?
Oh, that's a question we're just starting to discuss and try to figure out. If I had the answer, Martin, I would share it with you.
Yeah, I've heard some really interesting theories. That's why I'm prodding a
Ooh,
little bit.
what's been your favorite one so far, or the one that's
Well,
stood out?
I think one of the industries that might, or one of the kind of themes that might gain some steam out of this is wellness and also just purchasing behaviors. It's like
Mhm.
depending on how long this lasts, will people come out of it changed and thinking, oh, I haven't been spending that much money on entertainment and certain types of food and things like that for so long that maybe that's going to permanently change my behavior or even
Yeah.
a percentage of consumer behavior. But I mean, again, that's very theoretical. But yeah, it's a discussion that I've had before that I think is kind of interesting.
I read something the other day that said every major kind of disruption that there has been historically or recent history, there's always followed a period of relaxation. So, after the First World War, you had the Roaring Twenties, and it's happened every time. So it'll be interesting to see, to your point, what percentage of certain behaviors remain, and I think there will be some major shifts. But it also takes a long time to change certain elements of human behavior. And if this is a 2-year span, is that enough time to kind of, from an evolutionary biology standpoint, to change some pretty fundamental things? Probably not. And it's where on the scale different behaviors might fall, right? So
Totally.
socializing and going to live concerts, I think that'll take a while to come back, but when it does, I think people will still want to partake. But do we do more online streaming in the meantime? Sure.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's where are you going to see the pent up demand, right? So right now, you just have a larger group of the economy and of the population that might be used to buying more premium brands. So for me, I'll be interested to see, what does this do for the luxury brand or the premium brand segment of the market? You're going to have people that will, I'm not talking about luxury watches or cars or clothing or things of that nature, but even from a necessity point of view, there's people that might be trading down for necessities like food products and things of that nature to something less expensive, somewhat out of necessity. And that's very much on a macro level. So seeing how that impacts things, you're already seeing from a manufacturing standpoint, food companies, food manufacturers are really shrinking their product line, right? They're not producing a wide variety of SKUs. They're really just honing in on what sells well, what hones in well. And so that's a little bit by choice. I think as we continue to go through this, you'll see some supply chain restrictions that will limit some selection for consumers, which will be interesting. So some of it will both be by choice and necessity of not choosing a more premium brand. And some of it will be the market, responding to that to a certain extent. But I think there'll be such a pent up demand for things like sports and live events and concerts and appointments and things of that nature. I think that will roar back pretty significantly. But it's also going to be the industry that is hit the hardest, with TV and film production basically at a complete shutdown and concerts and things of that nature just completely, the sports industry and advertising and sponsorship. I mean, there's billions of dollars that are just eroding from that industry right now because there's nothing going on, and you can't easily replace that if you don't necessarily have a product to display, but the demand is still there. So I think the biggest thing coming out of this is looking at it, where are the demand vacuums that there's no supply currently to meet that demand. If you look at what will be the V-shaped curve of the recovery, those industries that have such a massive rush to fill the demand that exists are the ones that are going to really tick up GDP the fastest right out of the gate. So, and that's not, I think, any secret sauce. I think most people would anticipate that. It's where you get into the edges around product that people might have access to now. coupled with the fact of the disruption to the economy around people love going out for dinners. Well, how many restaurants are going to be able to survive, the delivery or pickup, model, and be around after the fact? And local businesses, and small business. I know Jen and I talked about that just the other day. I mean, they provide so much character and such a contribution to our communities that what does that mean for the trend that happened moving away from large department stores to in some cases smaller retailers? And it's an interesting argument around the convenience of a big retail store for consumers versus the uniqueness of a small boutique when you're looking at clothing, or you're looking at experiences, things of that nature. So that's going to be interesting to me.
It seems to, I don't know, it seems to be that with every major change, you kind of get a bit of an equal and opposite reaction, right? So you'll get some things that tend towards one end of the scale, whether that is simplicity in this case and maybe wellness. You might get to an extreme on one side, but chances are you're also going to have an equal and opposite reaction on the other, where people lean into some form of either pent-up demand as well. I don't think we're necessarily going to see it's one or the other. But what the behaviors look like within those spaces will be interesting.
Yeah, it should be. There's a lot of really interesting potential changes, and like you said, it could be vastly different from industry and even company size. The one thing that I've been hearing a lot as well is just how this is kind of putting gas on a lot of strategic plans that organizations have maybe spent a little less time on in the last couple of years. And it's kind of an interesting, a lot of that has to do with digital. But it's kind of an interesting scenario to be in, because there's an urgency, but also that urgency is potentially harmful if you're not actually taking the time to think strategically about these issues. I am just curious whether you guys are feeling the same thing.
Yeah, so I think that agility is for sure important especially in this kind of situation. Your ability to respond, your ability to be agile, to have top talent that can help deliver. And there's no pandemic playbook. Like, this is your kind of back to square one. Not necessarily not square one, but you're kind of rewriting your plans for the year, for the next 2 years, potentially looking out, trying to figure out, you've got to be a bit of an innovator, a futurist, you need some pragmatism. But at the same time, I think your point around technology is an important one, because I think that this will, in a lot of ways, probably accelerate organizations' investment in technologies and in AI that probably help support both the efficiency of their business, but to service customers as digitally as possible. You look at something like retail over the next little while, and you look at some industries, and you take a telecommunications company that so much of their sales are going to be in retail sales related to upgrading your cell phone. Okay, well, now they have to pivot to be able to service those customers not wholly online, but respond in a world where retail may be suffering for a little while here. And what does that look like? So I think technology I think this will cause an acceleration of innovation in that space. And I think there'll be some fascinating changes. I feel for gyms just now, fundamentally their entire business model. Okay, at-home workouts have been great to replace that, but that revenue stream and developing that, and what does this space within a gym look like when this is over, where people are going to be more cognizant of kind of the sanitation. So I have to imagine kind of agility and ability to reposition. So you're either going to have brands that don't adjust quickly enough and kind of over time struggle to keep up with market, you're going to get ones that innovate and are able to kind of pivot in position and survive in a new world. And then I think the reality is this is going to be a new wave of businesses that are responding to demand once a new world is shaped, right? So I think you'll probably see an influx of new businesses coming out of this that
Totally.
never able to figure it out.
The gym example is great because it's kind of it's interesting because it's potentially a new business model too. It's like you're constrained as a gym to your physical footprint, but maybe this is starting to develop some of those processes that people can actually start offering different tiers based on working out at home with a class. And that, to my knowledge, hasn't been very popular before this. So it's kind of interesting
that's it. Is you saw some of it already. Some people like Steve have their home bike that, are already on this bandwagon. I'm someone that I need someone to yell at me, or like I need the peer pressure of a class that is like, stop being so lazy. Like, come on, get up,
I've offered to call and yell at her, but she
business for you, Steve.
There you go. The pay would be lousy.
I'm like every day just now, I'm like, I should really do some exercise. I like ordered a yoga mat. It's still in the box at the door. Like, that'll be a new business model. Having someone call and yell at you. But there were already technologies in development that were helping to bring that ability to be a part of a class home. And I think this accelerates that. So I think this is just going to be an accelerator in areas that we were, that were already being explored, because there's something that has fundamentally had to create a shift in behavior.
Yeah, and what I'll just add to that, like with the gym I go to locally here, what's part of the reason why I like that place, even though I have, weights and a bike at home, like and stuff like that I can use, is there's a community there. And the businesses that say that they've tried for a long time to try and create that sense of community and belonging, and like, I don't know a bunch of the members there. I know the staff that's there, but they do such a good job of, treating everyone, uniformly in such a great way that they've pivoted to just, keeping their staff and keeping people moving by posting workouts on Instagram. And, like, they're not getting paid for it, but they're still trying to keep up with the community, to the point where, myself, I bought a block of classes, to help support them. And again, it's a small business that, I was going to do my part and spend a couple $100. I didn't need to. I still had classes in the bank on their app, but like, it's one of those things that they're just so, the people that are fundamentally genuine in whatever business that they've got, may it be a local restaurant or a gym or whatever the case may be. I think what's heartening here is that there is a group of people that truly want to help support those businesses and those individuals, and they're the ones that really genuinely seem to care about their customers and their clientele, and the clientele are reciprocating by trying to support them when they kind of need it the most. I hope that all of the measures that the government has taken, and the policies that have been taken, that have been implemented, do enough to help supplement what individuals are doing to help support the business, that they can make their way through. It'll be a real shame if some of these entrepreneurs, have to make really, really difficult decisions out of, necessity, that might, change the business landscape of, of the country. It's one of the things I know we talked about internally, and I'll let Jen maybe chat a little bit about it, but, we're trying to find a way to support businesses, like local businesses, in some sort of a way. And, we know that, the United Way does a lot and supports a lot of different charitable endeavors across the country. And, internally for us, we wanted to do something to give back, and show our support in kind of what we do well and we do best. And, So, when Jen made the suggestion of this United from Home campaign that we came up with, it was a phenomenal initiative that I thought was a good way that we could show some support, especially because we get involved with a lot of charitable organizations, not only directly, but through our clients that we deal with. And the customers I've spoken to for events that are, that have a charitable component to them, one of their biggest concerns is that the charities aren't going to receive those funds, but also the vendor partners or whatever that they typically ask to help support that event and fund the donations that go, they're also encumbered with these issues. So it has a knock-on effect. So I don't know. I mean, Jen, you can talk a little bit more about the initiative, but I just thought it was a genuine good way that we could hopefully do something to help support it.
Yeah, Marcella didn't know we were going to plug our campaign.
No, these are the things I want to hear about too, because I totally agree that this is like the good stories right now are all about support and figuring out how to help support businesses, because there's a lot of people struggling right now.
Well, yeah, it is, and we're incredibly, lucky to be able to be in a position to support. And so essentially we've designed a collection. It's a t-shirt, a tote bag, and a mug under our United from Home campaign banner. And really it became about, we had so many associates saying they wanted to help in some way, and hearing from friends and family, it's like, I want to help the community, but we all want to do our part to stay home and obviously follow all appropriate guidelines. So how do you support your local community while you're social distancing? So we've set up a merchandise collection where people can buy a t-shirt, a tote bag, a mug, and 100% of the net proceeds are going to United Way.
Cool.
So we're very excited about that, and we're already seeing a lot of interest. So
that's great.
It's set to officially launch by Monday at the latest.
Jen told me she's going to buy you a shirt, Marcella.
That sounds great. I could use another word.
Marcella, you want to be an influencer?
Yes, definitely. Are you going to have a website for it, or how are you?
Unitedfromhome.ca.
Okay, cool.
So
write it down.
Please go visit, check it out.
Great.
Buy a t-shirt, support the United Way.
Definitely. Cool.
Yeah.
This has been an interesting topic that I've also been talking to a lot of people about, and it's the work from home life. And as to leaders within your organization, what's that been like for you personally? What's that been like as people who manage people? And how do you, it's a huge topic, and we could go into a lot of different details about strategies and stuff like that, but I'm just curious what your experience has been like so far.
Steve, you want to go?
Yeah, I'll go first. For me personally, I was pretty used to it. I have a setup here at home because I telecommute from Ottawa to Toronto on a regular basis. So I already had a setup for me personally. So it wasn't that challenging for me to get going with it. I was pretty lucky that way. I'll be honest with you. I was more of a skeptic about work from home some time ago, but I think it's a good way to balance what has traditionally been a need for face time, and I don't think anything will ever really replace that. But I think people are discovering, and businesses are discovering, that there is a way that work from home can have a place in a typical workplace environment, and that there are some benefits to that beyond just the convenience of not having to commute. But what's been interesting is I think people have embraced it because it's so uniform. It hasn't been anything that was optional or forced on anyone, even though it kind of was. It was uniformly accepted. It's almost like everyone celebrates a certain number of national holidays. July 1st is Canada Day for everyone in Canada, and everyone gets the day off that day. So the uniformity around that typically means, people have a shared experience. Well, working from home, if people are able to work from home, and I want to recognize that there are some people that just can't, it's a shared experience. So those that are going through that, they're the ones having, happy hours or Zoom calls or Microsoft Teams calls or whatever it is. So there's been a good amount of, it's interesting, but a good amount of camaraderie and more connection that's been driven through the shared experience, even though we're not physically, connected to one another. And it'd be interesting to see how that will continue as time goes on. From a leadership point of view, I think it's going to be interesting. I think it will, over time, the self-starter, motivated hustler, use whatever adjective you want, somebody that is really able to motivate themselves, I think will just continue to thrive. I think others that really require more direction or more coaching, or sometimes a kick in the pants, like those individuals, I think will struggle a little bit more, to keep up with it over time. Initially, there's that newness factor, but I think it'll be interesting to see the experiment as it goes on. But I think it will fundamentally change the way business leaders think about their business and their teams and how they operate, for sure.
Yeah,
it will. But I agree with you. I think what'll be interesting is, and there's a few things. One, it really can open up your talent pool if you're willing to look at it from an opportunity from that standpoint. So you don't need to be hiring necessarily in market. But Steve, you bring up an interesting point on the uniformity of the experience right now. Steve actually shared a podcast with me the other week she's a futurist, Amy Webb is her name, and it was the Verge podcast. And she talks about kind of the basic, principle that you can apply is what would it take for X to equal Y if you're trying to kind of forecast or be a bit of a futurist yourself. And so when you think about it, it's easy to jump to, well, we all work from home now and we're able to do it, so therefore this will continue. But we are still social creatures, and that's not going to change. I think you'll see an excitement for people to be somewhat back together, once they're able. And as soon as you're in that environment, the same challenges will still apply, where it's very different when you've got a certain number of people in a room having a conversation and some people dialed in and not able to engage the same way. Whereas this is an equalizer. So it'll be interesting to see how much actually changes going forward, but if you can tap into kind of I think a balance there and how you continue to make technology, it enables us to be inclusive, but when you're in a mix between in-person and remote, it'll be interesting to see how that continues to play out. And then Steve, you bring up a good point just on performance management. It's a lot harder when you can't physically kind of sometimes be there to help coach and guide someone. So we've been really, I think our team has done a really good job of pivoting to work from home, and I've kind of consistently heard that from partners that we work with and customers' experiences as well. And we've made a huge effort to be transparent and communicative, and having our managers keep up touch bases. And we sent out T-shirts and a note to all of our associates just to let them know we were thinking of them. And so there's been a lot of effort as well behind making sure people remain engaged. And a big thanks to any of them that are listening for kind of
yeah, that's a huge,
not watching Netflix all day.
That's a huge challenge for sure. We're a fairly small team, so it's probably a little bit easier for a company of our size, but I think those challenges just kind of just grow exponentially the larger your teams are. I think like one of the things that I think is probably one of the most complex parts is just keeping that engagement and culture continuing, because the longer people are remote and at home, the office really becomes your home. So how do you continue that level of engagement and connection when people have been in their kitchen like myself for the last couple weeks. So
It's just so you're
yeah.
close to the snacks.
What's that?
I said it's just so you're close to the snacks.
Yeah, exactly. That's why. That's why I strategically chose it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jenny needed to use the study.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, space and also physical footprints and what is an office and how do you view that cost
Yeah.
and
I think what's going to be interesting there, I don't think the office is ever going away. And, I hope not. I think there's still a place for it. But, I think a couple things are pretty clear. One is that if a business is at all resistant to adapting to and embracing new technologies, you're a step behind and you're going to suffer through massive changes way more quickly. So you have to be not just aware of it, it's like investing, right? If you're investing money, they tell you a good practice is to always take a small portion of your investment dollars and put it into something riskier, and it may pan out and it may not, but that's just, something that, it's not for everyone, but it when it does pan out, man, it has a huge benefit. And the fact I'd say that, our team has been nimble and has been pretty adept with technology has really helped us to make that switch much more quickly than a lot of others. So that's certainly one thing. The other point is what is the definition of, an office get together, or, what does that mean? I think, getting the teams together, getting people to connect with one another and connecting with customers and, physically seeing one another and making that connection, I think it'll heighten the value of those experiences that much more for when it does occur. So, already we've got lots of customers that have gone to hoteling and have gone to, desks that are shared and shared spaces and reducing footprint and things of that nature. So that's not brand new, but what is going to be interesting is if this becomes even a little bit more widespread, I still think people are going to have a need for common spaces, meeting places, and still value the opportunity to hold meetings and hold events. And frankly, that's important to our business because that's the type of thing that we help support. And we help support people making those connections. That's our business is trying to take that connection and make it tangible for people. So I think that'll have a really good place going forward.
Well, and I think the other side to this is, there's the physical component of where people are and the technology that connects us and the dynamic. But I think the other thing is this the soft side of things, if you will, is as soon as you have people more spread out, I think the leadership qualities such as transparency start to play almost an even bigger role, because you still need a level of structure around people buying into what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to accomplish. And when you don't have the physical structure, the company values, your communication channels, I think all of that becomes probably even more important. And you need to kind of really focus on building trust with associates so they're going to buy into what you're kind of trying to do with the business and understand where decisions are coming from. And that's always been true, but I think probably now more than ever. So there's a sense of kind of joint ownership, and I think associates and people are just more inclined to buy in when they feel a part of something. And so I think there's an element just of this kind of quote unquote the soft qualities of around leadership in general, that kind of the companies that thrive coming out of this, I think, will be really focused on transparency, communication, and associate engagement.
Yeah, it's a great point. That actually has not come up before, but the fact that because the style of management potentially changes due to the environment, that if you were to look at skills on a sliding scale, you might actually be changing those scales a little bit because the environment's completely different, and something I totally didn't think about, but that's a great point. Yeah, that's super interesting. Cool. I'm trying to think now. Is there anything else you guys? Honestly, this has been great, and I'm like out of questions, so I'm taking a pause here.
No, that's all good.
Is there anything else that you guys want to talk about specifically?
I think my only comment will be in everyone trying to figure out what the new normal will be. I think it's probably you got a golden opportunity to sit in a space of the unknown for a little while, and this is a giant social and economic experiment that I don't want to take lightly, but at the same time, you can use it as an opportunity to reevaluate some things that are pretty fundamental to how we operate into our business. And I think we're already starting to see some innovation come out of this. I read a quick little post online just from someone asking, would anyone ever consider starting a brand new business during a period of time like this? And what would that be, and what would that look like? And I think entrepreneurs are never gonna peter out in anything. If anything, they'll just reinvent themselves and come back as something a little bit stronger. So, my thing is that even though stuff feels like it's going 100 miles an hour right now, I think there's still a good opportunity to take pause in what's happening and how things will be different. And I think there's an opportunity here for us to create that new different rather than just have it happen to us. And in that way, it might be a bit of a gift. And so, certainly being mindful to where, demand will roar back and where the economy will come back and where people will be. But I think for me, just for my brain wrapping my head around such a massive amount of change, that has kind of helped a little bit in being able to kind of shape what will be new going forward. And, related to the business that you're in, Marcello, I think, digital is certainly a huge amount of white space, not just for companies that I think you'll see massive investments in upping their e-commerce game and trying to, better connect with customers virtually. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see how people reinvent themselves. And I guarantee you there'll be in 6 to 12 months from now, a bunch of aha, liberating insights that we go, man, that's smart. I wish I'd never even considered that before, never even thought of that. And it'll be something that just comes out of a product of, what we're going
Totally.
through right now.
Totally. And even just, culturally for organizations that hadn't really been high on the innovation and technology scale, it's definitely, I think, going to be a force of change for organizations like that.
Yeah. And you'll see better business practice even on the fundamentals, right? Maintaining, cash on the balance sheet. And I mean, it's part of the reason why I think the automotive industry, I mean, nobody's traveling anywhere right now. So, I have to think that, automotive cars and stuff like that are not selling certainly immediately, but we support quite a few automotive customers, and, they've done a phenomenal job of managing their business so that, they can weather this storm, I think probably a little bit better than they may have in the past with, inventories in North America and making sure that things were a bit more just in time. So nothing will be perfect. This is new and it's going to have an impact on everyone. But I think just some fundamental good business practices will come out of this a little bit that will hopefully make companies more resilient if something like this happens again. Or something similar like this happens again.
Yeah, so that's a good point.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for putting aside some time to chat today. I was really looking forward to this, and I think there are a lot of really awesome insights and a lot of great perspectives from both of you. So thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Thanks for setting it up.
Thanks for the
Yeah,
chat.
no problem.